Hi there. Welcome to my channel. I want to read something today that a few months back, about 6 months back, I had been reading. I started a weekly Kabbalah class with someone who my partner has known for a long time, and so I trusted to take this class with him. He is Jewish. He's a master Freemason, um, and is someone that I had met in person when I visited them in Los Angeles and got a good feeling about. Um, the classes were very, very nerdy. I wanted to very much ascend to higher knowledge and enlightenment and all kinds of mysteries, but the classes were more gematria, which is like numerology, extrapolating meaning from Hebrew words through number. And there were some basic concepts that he taught me, which looking back now I'm very grateful. But at the time I was very in a hurry to sort of bring together what I had been brought up with Christian knowledge, and was kind of this view that there is a perennial philosophy, and that I could marry Jewish mysticism with some Christian concepts that I knew of, and I really had a preconceived notion of what I wanted to learn. So I probably wasn't a very good student, but we had good sessions, and I look back on them fondly. I did stop them after about 6 or 7 to enter into recovery. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. But I read this chapter out of a book by Rabbi Arya Kaplan, called Meditation in Kabbalah, which is a book that Andrew, my teacher, had me buy, and as we kind of read through it, or I would read a chapter and then come back and we would talk about it. And I, at the time, was smoking marijuana on a consistent basis, and I read this chapter sitting in bed about 7 p.m. My wife by my side, and she was doing her own thing, and I was puffing on my weed vape pen, and then I read this, and I attribute reading this chapter to a great spiritual awakening, and I'll go into it a little bit after I read it. So here we go, without further ado. Chapter 1, from Meditation in Kabbalah. The Talmudists. With the destruction of Solomon's temple, the age of the prophets came to a close, and a dark age descended over their heirs. The biblical canon was sealed, and after this, almost no important literature was produced until the time of the Talmud. Although there are some historical records of this period, the most important being found in the Apocrypha, virtually no mystical literature exists. Some of the mystical teachings of the prophets had survived, but they were only taught in the narrowest circles and were most probably confined to small secret societies. Thus, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, a leader in the 1st century, taught, "The workings of the Merkava should not be taught even individually, except to one who is wise, understanding with his own knowledge." These mysteries were not publicly taught, even within the secret societies, but were given over individually, to one worthy disciple at a time. The term workings of the Merkava, as used in the Talmud, refers to the mystery of Ezekiel's vision. Although the term is not found in the vision itself, it does occur in the verse, "Gold for the pattern of the chariot, Merkava, the cherubs," 1 Chronicles 2:18. The word Merkava is used to describe the cherubs on the ark, but Ezekiel himself identifies the cherubs as the angels seen in his vision. The word Merkava and it spells it out in Hebrew, but I'm not going to spell that out, comes from the root rachav, which resh kaf vau, if I'm saying that right, resh kaf vau, meaning to ride. The word rachav meaning to ride, and hence means a chariot or riding vehicle. In general, the concept of riding involves traveling and leaving one's natural place. When the Bible says that God rides, it means that he leaves his natural state where he is absolutely unknowable and inconceivable, and allows himself to be visualized by the prophets. One who sees God in this manner is said to experience a Merkava vision. The term Maaseh Merkava, or workings of the Merkava, refers to the setting up of a Merkava, that is, attaining a state where a Merkava vision can be attained. From the context in which this term is used in the Kabbalah text, it is obvious that Maaseh Merkava refers to the meditative techniques involved in attaining this mystical experience. The Ari, or Isaac Luria, explicitly describes an individual involved in the workings of the Merkava as being engaged in meditation, or hitba'atut. I'm butchering that. I'm not going to try to pronounce that Hebrew word for meditation again. I'll try it one more time. Hitba'atut. The Hekalat speaks of the individual making a chariot of light, with which he then ascends to the supernal chambers. The Hekalat is meaning the palaces. It's a group of literature of which I am about to read to you. These mysteries were entrusted to the religious leaders of each generation. Rav Zera, a sage of the 5th century, thus taught, even a summary of these mysteries should be given over only to the Chief Justice of the court. The Chief Justices had more than mere judicial authority. Each major community had its own ecclesiastical court, and these Chief Justices were normatively the religious leaders of their communities. In order to prevent the mysteries from degenerating into heresy, they were safeguarded by the religious leadership and taught individually only to those considered worthy. Ironically, we're reading them out loud here on YouTube. Among the early mystical schools, there is a group that the Talmud cryptically refers to as the first Hasidim. Among the things that the Talmud says about them is that they were zealous in bringing sacrifice and scrupulously buried refuse containing sharp objects so as not to cause harm to others. According to Rabbi Chaim Vital, these first Hasidim were among the important heirs to the prophetic tradition. The Mishnah states that the first Hasidim would linger an hour and then pray. To this, the Talmud adds that they would also wait an hour after their prayers, and that the prayer itself would also take an hour. Since there were 3 daily prayer services, they would spend a total of 9 hours each day involved in such devotion. There is no mention in the Talmud as to what these Hasidim did during the hours before and after prayer, but the Kabbalists explain it in terms of classical meditative techniques. In order to place oneself in the frame of mind necessary for successful deep meditation, one must sit calmly beforehand, quietly building up spiritual energy. Similarly, after intense meditation, one must also sit quietly, absorbing the effects of this experience. This would then clearly indicate that the prayer itself was used as a type of meditation among these first Hasidim. This is actually easy to understand. In the time of Ezra, shortly after the close of prophecy, the Great Assembly had composed the 18 Blessings, a prayer that was to be recited 3 times daily. This was the prayer said by the first Hasidim. Recited each day, 3 times, this prayer itself became almost like a mantra. While the words could be said almost automatically, the mind became totally absorbed by the words, inducing a very deep meditative state. The intensity of their concentration is evident, since the 18 blessings can normally be recited in 2 or 3 minutes, and the first Hasidim spent an entire hour on them. Most types of Merkava meditation involve the use of divine names. As far back as the time of Hillel, a leader in the 1st century BCE, we find warnings against using such names for one's own purposes. Hillel thus taught, "He who makes use of the crown will pass away." A very early source interprets this to refer to one who makes use of God's names for his own purposes. Kind of that commandment that says, "Do not take the Lord God's name in vain," maybe wasn't so much people saying, "Oh my God," or "God damn it," but was actually talking about this. People using the names of the divine for selfish gain, for selfish purposes, in the sense of magic, like a spell or a mantra. One of the earliest names associated with the Merkava school is that of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. While he is said to have been completely versed in all aspects of the tradition, both mystical and otherwise, he was still considered among the least disciples of Hillel. The greatest of Hillel's disciples, Rabbi Jonathan ben Uziel, was the mystic par excellence, but very little is known of his life. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, on the other hand, is a well-known figure in the Talmud, and a vast majority of its legalistic material is derived from the school that Rabbi Yochanan founded in Yavna after the destruction of the Second Temple in the year 70. Rabbi Jonathan ben Uziel is mentioned only a few times in the Talmud, but is credited with having authored the Targum, the authorized Aramaic translation to the books of the prophets. It is in this context that we see that he had a direct tradition regarding the mystical teachings of the prophets embodied in their books, and was thus one of the greatest students of the esoteric tradition in his generation. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the most important religious leader after the destruction of the Second Temple. Among his major disciples were the great Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Joshua, and great Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Joshua, and Rabbi Eleazar ben Arach, who were counted as the greatest sages and religious leaders of their time. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught them the mysteries of the Merkava, but did not take these teachings lightly, going to great lengths to teach his disciples proper respect for them. The Talmud tells us that the main one to whom Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai taught the mysteries was Rabbi Joshua, who in turn taught it to Rabbi Akiba. Besides being the greatest religious leader of his generation and one of its supreme logicians, Rabbi Akiba was also one of the leading mystics of his time. The Talmud tells how, alone of the four greatest sages of his generation, he was able to penetrate the deepest mysteries and remain unscathed. There are some mystical books attributed to Rabbi Akiba and his school, the most prominent being Altiot de Rabbi Akiba, or the Letters of the Rabbi Akiba, which discusses the mystery of the letters of the alphabet. Some also attribute to Rabbi Akiba the present recension of Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Formation, one of the most important and mystical classics of the Kabbalah. As an adept in the science of meditation, we would expect to find Rabbi Akiba familiar with the various manifestations of the higher states of consciousness, an important experience in high meditative states and synesthesia, where sound is seen and colors are heard. On the verse, "And all the prophets saw the voices," Exodus 20:15, Rabbi Akiba states that they saw the sounds and heard visions, a clear example of synesthesia. Since Rabbi Akiba was able to speak of this state, it is also highly probable that he experienced it. Hillel had 80 disciples. The greatest was Rabbi Jonathan ben Uziel, while the least was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It is said of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that he was not ignorant of anything. He knew Mishnah, Talmud, law, exposition, grammatical analysis of the Torah, analysis of the scribes, logical inference, similar wordings, astronomical calculations, gematriot, incantations for angels, incantations for demons, incantations to palm trees, proverbs of washwomen, proverbs of foxes, a great thing, a small thing, in quotes. A great thing is the workings of the Merkava, while a small thing is the discourses of Abaya and Rava. Since this was true of the least of them, it was certainly true of the greatest. It is said that when Rabbi Jonathan ben Uziel was sitting and studying Torah, any bird that flew by was immediately consumed. From the Talmud. The translation, Targum, on the prophets was authored by Jonathan ben Uziel, based on a tradition from the prophets Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. When he wrote it, an earthquake shook an area 400 parsangs square in the land of Israel. A heavenly voice, Bat Kol, declared, "Who is it who reveals my mysteries to man?" Jonathan ben Uziel stood on his feet and said, "It is revealed and known before you that I have not done this for my own glory, nor for the glory of my father's house. I have done it for your glory, so that controversy not increase in Israel." From the Talmud. It happened that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was on a journey, riding on a donkey. His disciple, Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach, who was driving the donkey, said, "Master, teach me a lesson in the workings of the Merkava." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, "Did I not teach you that the workings of the Merkava may not even be taught individually, except to one who is wise, understanding from his own knowledge?" The other replied, "Then let me repeat something that you have already taught me." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai immediately got down from the donkey, wrapped himself in his talit, and sat on a stone under an olive tree. The disciple asked, "Rabbi, why did you get down?" The master replied, "Is it then proper that you should expound on the workings of the Merkava when the divine presence joins us and angels are all around while I am sitting on a donkey?" Rabbi Eliezer ben Arach then began to expound on the workings of the Merkava. Fire came down and surrounded all the trees of the field. When this was told to Rabbi Joshua, he was on a journey together with Rabbi Yossi the priest. They decided that they too would expound on the workings of the Merkava out in the fields. Rabbi Joshua began the discourse. This was during the dry summer season, but the sky clouded over, and a rainbow appeared in the sky. Angels gathered to listen to them, like people thronging to the entertainment at a wedding. Rabbi Yossi the priest later told Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai about his experience. He replied, "Happy are you, and happy are those who bore you. Happy are my eyes that have seen this." Source the Talmud. 4 entered the orchard, Pardes. They were Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, the other, and Rabbi Akiba. Rabbi Akiba warned them, "When you enter near the stones of pure marble, do not say, 'Water, water,' since it is written, 'He who speaks falsehood will not be established before my eyes.'" Psalms 101:7. Ben Azai gazed and died. Regarding him, it is written, "Precious in God's eyes is the death of his saints." Psalms 116:15. Ben Zoma gazed and was stricken. Regarding him, it is written, "You have found honey. Eat moderately, lest you bloat yourself and vomit it." Proverbs 25:16. The other, or Elisha ben Abuya, gazed and cut his plantings, or became a heretic. Rabbi Akiba entered in peace and left in peace. The angels also wished to cast down Rabbi Akiba, but the Blessed Holy One said, "Leave this elder alone, for he is worthy of making use of my glory." Talmud. Entered the orchard. They ascended to heaven by means of a divine name. Pure marble, as transparent as clear water. Do not say, "Water, water," is here, and how can we proceed? Ben Zoma gazed toward the divine presence, Shekinah, and was stricken. He lost his mind. Precious in God's eyes is the death of his saints. This death is harsh in his eyes, since Ben Azai died unmarried. Still, it is impossible that he should not have died, since it is written, "No man can see me and live." Exodus 33:20. Rabbi Shlomo Yeshachi Yaki, from Rashi 1040 to 1105 commentary. They did not physically ascend, but it appeared to them as if they had ascended on high. From the Tosafot, 12th century commentary. The sages used the term orchard, Pardes, or paradise, to denote the Garden of Eden, the place set aside for the righteous. It is the place in Aravot, or the highest heaven, where the souls of the righteous are stored. In the Hekalat, it is explained that sages who were worthy of such undertakings would pray and purify themselves of all uncleanliness. They would fast, immerse in the mikvah, and purify themselves. Then they would make use of various names and gaze into the chambers on high. There they would see how the watches of angels stand. They would see how one chamber follows another and what is in each chamber. Rabbi Akiva warned them, when you gaze into the profound depths of Anta, of your heart, approaching the stones of pure marble, do not say, water, water. There is actually no water there at all, but only a form is seen. If one says there is water there, he is blaspheming. This is explained in Hekelat Rabbatai. The watcher of the chamber of the marble door casts forth thousands upon thousands of waves of water, but actually not even a single drop is there. Rabbi Akiva says, it appears as if the waves are of water, but there is actually not even a single drop. All that one sees is the glow in the air from the stones of pure marble, which are included in the chamber. Their radiance resembles water, but if one says, what is the purpose of this water? He is a blasphemer. They did not actually ascend into heaven, but gazed and saw it in the profound depths of the heart. They saw it like one gazing through a dull mirror. Ben Azai gazed. This means that he continued uttering divine names so as to be able to see in a clear mirror, and as a result, he died. Ben Zoma gazed and was stricken, that is, he lost his mind. The other cut his plantings. Since the place is called an orchard, the sages say that he cut his plantings. This means that he blasphemed. He saw the angel Metatron, who was given authority to sit for 1 hour to inscribe the merit of Israel. He said, I have learned that it is not permitted to sit in that place on high. Perhaps there are 2 authorities. Rabbi Chananel ben Chushiel. The sages taught that 4 entered the orchard. In the greater and lesser Hekelat, it is explained that they are engaged in certain practices, uttered prayers in purity, and made use of the crown. They were then able to gaze at the chambers. This does not mean that they actually ascended on high, but that they gazed and saw it in the chambers of their heart, viewing it just like something seen clearly with the eyes. They hear, see, and speak with an eye that views with Ruach HaKodesh. This is the explanation of Rav Hai Gaon. Rabbi Nathan ben Yechiel, 1035 to 1106, lexicographer. Many sages maintain that one who possesses all the necessary qualifications has methods through which he can gaze at the Merkava and peek into the chambers on high. One must first fast for a certain number of days. He then places his head between his knees and whispers into the ground many songs and praises known from tradition. From his innermost being and its chambers, he will then perceive the 7 chambers. In his vision, it will be as if he is entering one chamber after another, gazing at what is in each one. There are 2 tractates in which this is taught. These are called the Greater Hekelat and the Lesser Hekelat, as is well known. It is with regard to such an experience that the Talmud teaches 4 entered the orchard. The chambers are likened to an orchard and are given this name. The 4 who entered the Merkava and passed through the chambers are likened to people entering an orchard. It is taught that Ben Azai gazed and died. This is because it was his time to leave the world. It is also taught that Ben Zoma gazed and was stricken. This means that he became insane because of the confounding visions that his mind could not tolerate. He was like the stricken ones, regarding which the 91st Psalm was written. When the Talmud states that the other cut his plantings, it is again using the allegory of the orchard. Since one of the 4 did irreparable damage, he is likened to one who enters an orchard and cuts down its trees. The other assumed that there are 2 authorities, very much like the Magi, who believed in Ormuzd and Ahriman, as well as independent domains of good and evil, like light and darkness. This is the intent of the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva was the most perfect of them all. He gazed properly, not exceeding his limitations, and his mind was able to encompass these mighty, confounding visions. God gave him power so that as long as he gazed, he kept proper thoughts in his mind and maintained a proper mental state. This was known to all early sages, and none denied it. They maintained that God would accomplish wonders and fearsome things through the saints, just as he did through the prophets. They do not deny the Talmudical accounts of miracles, such as those involving Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa and the like. When Mar Rav Samuel Gaon, who headed the academy between 730 and 748 CE, and others like him flourished, they began to read the books of the philosophers. They claimed that such visions were only seen by the prophets, and that only the prophets could invoke miracles. They denied all the accounts which told of miracles occurring to the saints. They say that this is not law. The same is true of the account of Rabbi Akiba's gazing into the chambers, and the account of Rabbi Nehunia ben Hakana and Rabbi Ishmael. Regarding all these, they say it is not the law. But our opinion remains that God does wonders and miracles to his saints, and also allows them to see the chambers. Ha'i Gaon. I'm going to stop there, and I'll pick up maybe in a later part of the book. It's hard to say exactly why reading this hit me the way it did. First of all, I was high, smoking marijuana, so that was probably a part of it. But I think that magnified what I was reading. There is something even now as I read it where I remember back when I first read it that there was something eerily familiar about what I was reading. And it wasn't just a familiarity like, oh, I had heard this before or read this in a book. It was like something that hit me on such a deep level. I was trembling. I felt my whole body tremble in a way that I hadn't felt since I was a little kid in church, and the pastor asked me if I knew I was going to heaven or hell, which is kind of a creepy thing. I don't theologically agree with that necessarily, but the point is that I was thinking about my soul back in those days at church. I was thinking about where I would go after death. I was thinking about life on a deeper level than just here in the flesh. And as I was reading these passages about the Merkava visions, gazing into the orchard, I believe them wholeheartedly. There is no doubt in my mind that what these saints were doing is what the very dedicated Hasids do now, which is sit on the floor with their head between their knees after fasting, and they meditate and they chant these mantras, these Hebrew words, these divine names over and over in a very particular set of numbers. And doing so, there's a possibility that they'll be granted a holy vision. And it's creepy. I mean, this is X-Files stuff. This is stuff that you're either going to think, oh, that's ridiculous, or you're going to look in deeper. And it's not like, I don't know if you've ever heard like those DMT stories where people come back after doing ayahuasca or DMT with very similar stories. They will go somewhere and they see these entities, and the entities they describe are person after person after person will describe very similar visions of entities. And you could think of it that way, that these visions, when descending into the Merkava, which they're not actually descending, right? They're gazing, that they're very much, it is an astounding truth that they are all similar. And I haven't really gone in depth of how these visions go. I'll do that in a second video. But the very fact is that they had a profound impact on those who did gaze on them, according to the Talmudic literature. And it's one of my favorite stories. I love a story that I can take seriously. I love a story that creeps me out, that penetrates down to the depths of my soul. You know, Edgar Allan Poe wrote stories like that and poems like that. I love me a good horror movie or a good creepy creep out, because I believe that I get too complacent in life, and life gets too mundane, if you will, And these things are things that shake me at my very foundations and wake my soul up to the transcendent, to the divine, if you will. So that's all I have to say, I think. Yeah, I'll do a part 2 where I read a little more more in-depth and detail of the Heckalot literature and what happens to the rabbis who descend into the orchard. So stay tuned. Thanks.